I'm Andrew Nesky, and this is Science in the Outer Streams. George Ivanovitch Gurdjieff is arguably the most colorful, enigmatic, and charismatic man of the 20th century. Was he a con man, or the most immediate, the most vivid, and the most totally representative figure of our time? A man one biographer calls an avatar of consciousness in a world surrendered to trance. Whenever Gurdjieff identified his profession to the profane, he called himself variously a carpet merchant, a currency trader, and the owner of a business that manufactured false eyelashes. To his loyal and devoted students, he was master, devil, teacher, and friend. Whatever he was, his life as spiritual teacher has left one of the most enduring, mysterious, diverse, and intriguing legacies ever known by Western culture. Our guest is the president of the Claymont Society, an organization that directs Claymont Court, a community and school founded by an intimate and principal student of Mr. Gurdjieff, Mr. J.G. Bennett. Peter Shor has been working with the teachings of Gurdjieff since 1976, starting with a training in a traditional Gurdjieff-Ouspensky group. He soon integrated traditional fourth-way teachings with the more eclectic approach of J.G. Bennett. He has been active in fourth-way style teaching at Claymont and with groups in Washington, D.C. for almost 20 years. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, I know this is a big question, and it's a horrible thing to start with, but who was Gi Gurdjieff?
Well, George Gurdjieff was born in the late 1800s, and he was raised in a culture in Armenia that was dominated by the changes of the Russian influences. And as a child, he was very much at a loss at seeing the meaning of the culture that was changing from old to new culture. And it struck him that there must be more to life than was apparent. And he started to search as a young child and to really find out the answers to the questions of what is the meaning of life and how to understand why and what the significance of everything that exists that seemed to be so confusing and illogical. So he embarked on a search, formed a group of people called the Seekers of Truth, and traveled to various places, mostly in Central Asia, but it spanned a good distance, and over a period of 30 or 40 years, he went to various schools and studied with various forms of Sufism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, and he took the essence of spiritual teachings from many of these sources and put them together into one cohesive honey, as if he was a bee collecting from various flowers. And this honey he referred to as the fourth way, which seems to be a term that has been used by Sufi schools over the last many centuries. And the fourth way involves a balanced approach. What initially were called the other three ways were ways centered on intellectualism, emotions and prayer, and physical endurance and physical exercises. So those were the classic three ways, which tended to be done in isolation in monastic environments, but not within the general culture.
Ways for transformation.
Ways of transformation. So one went to a school, if, for example, the physical way, which at that time in India was called the way of the fakir. People would hold out their arms for periods or take postures that would really require a lot of willpower and would give a certain intensity of energy. But it would only go a certain distance, and often their bodies turned into cripples over the years, and their students ended up carrying them around from place to place because their arms were permanently to the side or whatever posture they were taking. So that's one way. The monastic approach of the monks, where they're mostly in prayer, was also a very isolated approach. So often when somebody studied that way, they left their family, if they had a family already, and went to a monastery for years. Sometimes they'd be in cells alone for many years. In other cases, they'd work with other brothers, but basically it was an isolated way, and the same with what he called the way of the yogi, which was more intellectual contemplation. So what he tried to synthesize was a spiritual path that integrated the three: thoughts, emotions, and the body, and also was able to be manifested in ordinary situations in worldly life, on the job, with your family, whatever the situation is, that you could bring a certain amount of consciousness and presence to that situation, so that ordinary life then becomes the agent for transformation.
Now, there's a lot of people that are watching the show right now that are hearing things like transformation of consciousness, spiritual growth, and it's a foreign concept to them.
Mm-hmm.
How would you explain the value of this sort of a pursuit to someone who has no intrinsic understanding of what it is and what the value is of going to this place?
Well, the main value of it is through awareness. So the more I'm aware of, the more intense and concentrated my existence. So if I'm only aware of what I'm thinking, then there may be something going on that I might not be aware of. There may be influences that are surrounding me, energies that I could use for creativity, just a world of possibilities that are closed if I'm just in a one-dimensional attention. So one of the aspects of consciousness is just expanding it so that it's not just a linear thread that